Yo, guys, welcome back to the Campus and Culture podcast, your place for the latest debates, trending topics, and discussions between Black students and professionals across all industries. Apologies, it has been a while. Exam season did hit at Imperial, and yes, it did hit from January. This is our first episode of 2026, so it's good to see you guys, and I hope the year's been going well so far. But today, we have a special episode, and we have very special people with us. So I'm going to start with myself. My name is Baba. I'm your host for today, second year medical student and the current vice president of Imperial's ACS. And to my left, I have...
Hello, this is Tamsin, and I'm also a second year medical student, and I'm ACS's social impact officer.
Yeah.
And then we've got our two lovely guests, so who wants to go first?
Oh, hi everyone, I'm Jeannine. I live with sickle cell and work in sickle cell research, education and service improvement.
Yeah.
And hi, my name is Mary Adetorimo. I work at Imperial as Summer Healthcare and Design Researcher, also a sickle cell ambassador for NHS Blood and Transplant, wear various hats, but also have lived experience of sickle cell.
Perfect. So thank you so much to the both of you for coming with us today. And I think to talk about what today's episode is about is really important. And it's about sickle cell anemia and about the importance of blood donation and what students and young people can do to join the cause and join the movement and give back to our fellow communities. So I think Tamsin was going to start us off.
Yeah, so Jeannine, you mentioned that you live with sickle cell. So could you tell us what sickle cell is to start off with?
Yeah, so sickle cell is a blood disorder. It's a blood disorder that affects the red blood cells, and how it affects red blood cells, it causes them to be produced sickle shaped, so like banana shaped. It looks like a sickle, which is why it's called sickle cell. And these sickle cells can't effectively carry oxygen around the body, and they are stiff, so they can't easily move throughout the blood veins, which means they get stuck in the veins. And when enough of them get stuck, it causes sickle cell pain. They also release a sticky substance which kind of glues them together, so they're more likely to get stuck together, causing pain. And when they cause pain, that's what we call a sickle cell crisis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for that explanation. You broke it down very nicely.
Thank you.
So what does that look like for you in sort of like a day-to-day?
So it affects everyday living basically. So day to day for me, people probably won't be able to notice, but currently right now I'm in crisis. I'm having a crisis in my back and my shoulders, but I still have to live my life. I still have to do things that I've agreed to, commitments, work, family, friends. And so even though I'm in pain a lot of the time, I would say every day I'm in pain, which is the biggest effect of sickle cell is the pain. It doesn't always stop me from doing what I need to do or what I want to do. Because I'm so used to the pain and the level of pain, I can deal with it quite effectively and get on with my life. But then there are times when I cannot deal with it effectively. My medications don't work or resting doesn't work. And that's when I have to go into hospital for pain relief that's more effective and stronger than what I have at home, possibly IV fluids. And a crisis could be caused by something underlying like an infection, so I might need antibiotics. So that's kind of when it takes you out of real life and you have to put your life on pause and you have to go for medical help when you can no longer help yourself. But yeah, day to day, I mostly experience pain and fatigue. So I'm a lot more tired than normal people would be, a lot quicker just doing regular things like washing up, doing laundry makes me a lot more tired than it might make you. And so I'll need to rest after that. And it also could cause me more pain. So it may mean that I can't do as many things in a day as I was planning to do. Like, for example, as I said, I'm in crisis right now. I knew that this was the only thing I could do today. So I didn't do anything else today but eat and rest to make sure I could make it today. And that's the reality of living with sickle cell.
Yeah, thank you. That's really appreciated. And you mentioned that you said you're in crisis right now. What does that mean? Like, what does that feel like, if you don't mind
No, of
answering?
course not. So, what it means for me is I'm having a level of pain that is more than my every day-to-day pain. And I'm having to take more pain relief than I would normally take, and more often than I would normally take. And the crisis is so hard to describe what sickle cell pain feels like.
Mm.
But it feels like someone is stabbing me over and over and over and over again with no let up in the stabbing. And then it also feels like that knife is on fire and that there's thousands of needles in my back. That's kind of how I can explain it. I was talking to a group of people who also live with sickle cell, and we was wondering, how can we get people to understand the type of pain that we live with and get them to kind of experience the type of pain that we live with? Because, you have labor and period pain simulators, and everything we came up with was illegal. So so we can't do that to everyday normal people because it would be classed as torture. And that's what sickle cell pain feels like. It feels like you're being tortured.
Okay. That,
Yeah, I think to describe it like that, so vividly, we can only imagine what it feels like. And I think it's a testament to your ability and your strength as a person to have lived with that for so many years and to still be here and to still be here spreading your story and trying to encourage others to learn about it. So thank you for being here.
thank
And so Mary, I was gonna quickly move on to you and talk or ask you, so do you know the difference between having sickle cell disease and having sickle cell traits or the traits?
Yeah, so with sickle cell disorder, especially when it comes to uh, because disease is a term within the community that where there's a bit of a tension whether you're going to use that word. So we use disorder, and it's a group of red blood cell disorders. So if someone's like got sickle cell, especially like anemia, they will carry both copies of the gene, and then that means, myself, I would carry both copies. So I've got S and C. Other people might have S and S, and then there's like SCD. So there's many different types of sickle cells when you have both copies. But with someone who has sickle cell trait, they only have one copy of the gene. So there would be like AS. And so when you think about someone who has trait, they're usually asymptomatic or they just don't have symptoms. But some, and in some cases, people have described having certain challenges, um, talking about having crisis, which there's not as much research in that space when it comes to the level of challenges people with sickle cell trait have. But majority of the time majority of the time they don't have any symptoms. But some things they might have to be careful of is like high altitude. So there has been scenarios where people with sickle cell trait going up in high altitudes may affect them. I think I'm trying to think about in terms of like high intense sports
Yeah.
and whether they might be um yeah, they might have some challenges around that. So most times people may not know they have the trait unless either, thank goodness we've got the national screening program, so they do um he'll think a test on the child when they're like a baby, and you'll find out if you've got a trait or if you've got the full-blown condition. So that's how we kind of differentiate. But how people who have sickle cell get here is having to think about that reality of two traits, or someone who has the full-blown condition and someone who has the trait. So those are yeah, a bit of a longer way to answer the
Mm,
question, but yeah, that's just a bit of a difference between having the disorder or sickle cell anemia and then being a carrier.
yeah, no, thank you. I think it is important to be educated about these things, and something that I just did now by calling it a disease when you mentioned it's a disorder. I apologize for that because even something as simple as language, we need to be careful of how that affects people and what's comfortable for them and what's the correct way to do things. Um, And so then I actually wanted then to move on to Jeannine and ask about what's your thoughts about how we can spread education and knowledge to people who don't have sickle cell anemia. And I know you contributed to one of the NHS's programs called the Act Now acronym, and I wondered if you could just briefly go into that.
The Act Now acronym.
Yeah.
Okay, I can start with that. So I would say 2022, there was a budget from NHS England to make sickle cell more known and understood through the NHS.
Yeah.
And one of the ways they was doing that was through educational kind of videos and sessions that they could do on a computer. And another one of them was to have posters in A&E with the Act Now acronym. So it's an acronym that very clearly states the steps for an emergency personnel, so someone in A&E, to take care of someone who's coming in with sickle cell. It's to look at their oxygen levels, listen to what they're saying, where is the pain, and listen to what they're saying about their pain plan, because the person with sickle cell is going to know the best about what to do for their pain. So it's really about reinforcing education that they should have had already,
Yeah.
but isn't widely done within the NHS. So sickle cell education isn't mandatory in the NHS. So it was kind of trying to make it so the NHS staff would go and do this course, this computer course, and then they could refer to the Act Now acronym for like any, refreshers about having a sickle cell patient. So it's a poster that is in A&Es, meant to be across the UK. Who really knows? Every NHS hospital is different and has different rules and guidelines about putting posters in A&Es. So it was actually quite hard to get it in quite a few A&Es. They didn't accept it, had to go through their ethical and guidance standards and all of this. So it was a little bit of a mess, I would say, because I don't even see it in the Guys of St Thomas A&E. I don't see it in there. And a lot of us still receive substandard care when we use that A&E, which is meant to be a standard of sickle cell care. Guys of St Thomas is meant to set the standard for sickle cell care across the UK. But there's still so many of us that receive substandard care when we go into A&E or when we get admitted to one of the wards, because the education isn't mandatory.
Yeah.
And because maybe 5 people that work in A&E might do it, doesn't mean that those 5 people are going to be there every single day. So it was great to kind of get the word out there and to get nurses and doctors aware of the education that's available for them to do. But it was really for them to do it with their own willingness and wanting to do it. It wasn't mandatory for them to do it. So I feel like it was a great idea that just didn't have the foundation to be foundational, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what also came with them was patient identifying cards. So not all of us, actually. I did a poll on this in about 4 WhatsApp groups we're a part of, which has 500 people with sickle cell in them altogether.
Yeah.
And I did a poll about how many people got the card. There was like 30 out of 60 people that answered my poll. 30 of them never got the card.
Wow.
20 of them got the card but has never used it because it's not effective in their A&E. The A&E doesn't know what this card means or what they should do because they've been presented with this card. And the rest of them have used it and have had some success. So it always comes from a great place, trying to do these things, trying to have the Act Now acronym, trying to have the patient identifying card. But if that specific hospital won't be a part of the wider plan, then it was really ineffective thing for us to do and for us to put money in. So the Act Now acronym is about, I never see it. I never hear of it. It's never spoken about within the NHS anymore. unfortunately.
Yeah. I think regardless, I think it's brilliant that you took that initiative to make these initiatives because people have the misconception that doctors know everything and that they are at the highest level of education and kind of understanding about everyone's well-being and how people experience things. When in fact, they're not perfect, and none of us are. And I think what you mentioned about having that kind of foundation is something that they're trying to tackle by, teaching even us as medical students at medical school more about these conditions earlier on, so that in our training, it's part and parcel of what we learn and what we know, so that when we then qualify and get to becoming doctors, we have a better understanding. And it's not so much, oh, we're being forced to learn about it, but it's just been a natural involvement in our academia. Um, and I think more about um, being informed and teaching people at the university level. I want to move on to you, Mary, about how, by founding the Imperial Sickle Cell Group, I think that's a perfect example of ensuring young people at university have that insight and that awareness about, sickle cell anemia. It's something as, early as being a first year or medical student or just university student.
Was there a question?
That wasn't a question, but then
Okay,
I
that
was
was a
just,
statement, and
yeah,
then I
just
can.
gonna quickly lead on to,
Yeah.
how was, I would say, how did it feel to be part of that group that made that
Okay,
group?
yeah. So, in terms of like the Imperial Sickle Cell Group, I remember like that early stage. And so Prof. Julie McCartney came from Tanzania. She was a visiting professor. And then there was Dr. Stephen Okoli, and then there was Dr. Norris Igbiniweka, and then myself, and there was lots of other individuals. We were like having regular meetings, and like we were all interested in seeing improvements in the sickle space when it came to research, clinical outcomes, etc., etc. So I came from, um, let's say, healthcare and design. So I come from a bit of a different angle, but obviously sickle cell and seeing improvements in sickle cell is something I'm really passionate about. So it was great to be in an environment where there was people at various levels. So we had the professors, we had consultants, we had PhD students, and then me as like an MRes. And so it was kind of utilizing their framework of like document and doing work in this space. So we're talking to our counterparts in the like sickle cell program in Tanzania. We're also collaborating with various like individuals at Imperial who are doing work when it comes to sickle cell, if it's like societal engagement, like Invisible Warriors, or other groups. So it was amazing to kind of be in that forming phase and be able to like develop a structure. But when it comes to like a sustainable way of doing it, that's something we're still like working on. But even like meeting Tamsin, she came to a few of those meetings and was so engaged, and then being able to see how that wisdom and knowledge is being passed down to the next generation. Because when it comes to sickle cell, obviously we're talking about like the experience of how it's like on ground in hospitals, when it comes to people's just general awareness, and it's those next generations of like medical students, nurses, um HCAs, anyone in that medical space. It's like let's look at them while people are also trying to support the learning of the individuals in the system now. So it was great to be part and like to be in this group, but at the same time you want to know like in the future that the impact can be felt. So also collaborating in this regards and coming on to talk about, have a session to be able to talk about sickle cell and blood donation, it's amazing. So yeah, that was I think, yeah, there's something about that element. I think even just hearing that you guys are learning about it more within your modules, because sometimes in the health space, you have like healthcare workers that will say this is the first time they are experiencing or coming across a person who lives with sickle cell. Like they're learning on the job how to take care, how to engage, not knowing much. And obviously it's because we're in this country. I don't know, maybe it's going to be different in other countries where the prevalence of the condition is higher. But there's something to say about improving the way people know and are exposed to what it really is about living with the condition, because it's invisible.
Yeah.
We are dealing with some of that tension, but hopefully seeds are planted, and by the time they get to caring for individuals with the condition, yeah, we can only pray and hope that like it helps, and they can be advocates in the space of the health system. Mhm.
It's those marginal gains to make long-term
Yeah.
impact. That's important, I think. Mm.
Yeah, and as most of the people listening here are going to be from African Caribbean descent, and we know that sickle cell affects mostly people who are Black, basically, I feel like we all are going to feel sort of a certain drive to want to do something to help however we can in the situation. And one of those ways could be talking about blood donation and promoting that even if you can't donate blood. So I wanted to ask any of you, have any of you received blood donations before?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about how they helped you?
Yeah, sure. So, because I have sickle cell, one of the 2 treatments that's available under the NHS is exchange blood transfusions. So I'm on an exchange program at Guy's and St Thomas's, which means every 5.5 weeks I go in and they take out my blood and they replace it with 8 bags of donor blood that does not have sickle cells in it, as that's the goal, is to dilute my blood that has the sickle cells in it. So when they finish the exchange blood transfusion, the goal of that is for the percentage of my blood that has sickle cell is equivalent to that of someone with sickle cell trait.
Okay.
So 30% of in my whole body is kind of what they're trying to get my sickle cells down to when they do an exchange blood transfusion. And I have that every 5.5 weeks. I have 8 bags. And I did the maths last night. That's 88 bags a year of blood that I need to just live
Mm.
what is normal for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And 88 bags, that means we need a lot of people to have donated that blood. So it's very important that we do what we can if we're able to. And yourself?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, my other hat is a sickle cell ambassador for NHS blood transplant. I am on the program. Sometimes I'm like, um, it, how to describe it? In terms of sharing that experience of being on the program, there's that whole notion of being grateful, like that you have this opportunity, but there is a tension of having to go through this process on a regular basis. So definitely did the maths as well. Like the numbers get wild. I'm quite tall. You can't see now while I'm sitting down, but I do have my blood exchange like every 4 weeks. And sometimes I'm like going back and forth with the medical professionals to say, listen, I really like, I'm struggling. I would like to have it a bit more. I think I'll have about 12 units because I'm a tall person. So then it's like 150 a year, and then after it's like 1,500 because I've been on the program for about a decade. So whenever I'm doing my talks for NHS blood transplant, I kind of encompass that reality of this is the amount that happens, or the amount of blood that a person needs. So we've just described together, like we could be adding up my maths right now, like 150, 88. Someone do the maths, please. But in terms of
230-ish.
but in terms of, and the reality is, so sickle cell, we've got about 18,500 people in the 18,500 individuals who live with sickle cell in the UK. And our numbers, we're looking at projection of those numbers growing. Quite a few of them are on the program. And so when you start thinking about the level of blood that is needed to just be able to improve the quality of life of individuals, save the quality, like save people's lives, because I see with like friends and family, it's night and day. You could be gone if you're not receiving a transfusion. So it's really important when you start looking at it from a sickle lens, but then if you even widen the scope outside of a sickle lens, there are people that need blood for car accidents, for in maybe if they've had childbirth and lost a lot of blood, any accident and emergency, other anemias and other conditions. So within our community, it's knowing the need is there, the demand is growing, and the reality is, I think, is about 3% of people from our community that is donating. So there are some challenges and barriers that we obviously have to be aware of, but it's just probably finding ways of normalizing the conversation within the community, finding ways of allowing people to see how it's like impacting life, because yeah, it might not be curing the condition, but at the same time, there is elements of how blood transfusion really does, you know, shift the trajectory of a person's like outcomes and how their life could be if they weren't on the program. Yeah.
So I remember earlier you mentioned about sickle cell trait and how that's a little bit different from sickle cell. If someone has the trait, would they be able to donate their blood?
Sickle cell trait can donate. Should be a nice little ring.
Right.
But just a bit of a caveat. So they can donate. They should go up. There's only certain challenges. Is like if they maybe potentially have a lot more extra sickle cells in and it clogs the machine, that's when they may get a letter saying that, okay, it's probably not wise for you to donate. And we have to just be mindful of there are some people that can't donate. So if you do have sickle cell trait, still go up for the process, still do it. There are some that can, but there are some where it does end up happening where they can't. But I would say if you can't donate, there's other ways you can support the cause. You could help champion, become ambassadors of it, discuss and like get people to donate on your behalf. But that's just a little bit of a caveat reality that people should be aware of. Yeah.
Okay. And if you donate once, could you donate again?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good to hear.
You should if you
You
can.
can donate multiple times a year.
Mm,
Don't do it too many times, but you can donate multiple times a year and be okay.
okay.
Yeah, I think for men it's 4 times a year, for females 3. We always think about like with women, hemoglobin levels. So they are looking or doing some studies to kind of look around that. But when it comes to that number, people can choose if they want to do it once a year, if they want to do it once. And sometimes they might have travel restrictions. Like imagine if you that might reduce the amount you can donate. But there are other people who, so I mentioned there's a donor recognition ceremony that happens, and these are like people who have been donating for decades, and some of them reach numbers of like 100 donations, 100 whole blood donations in their lifetime. And there's other type of blood donations where it's like platelets, so they might get to 250. And contextually, it's worth saying whenever I'm in those rooms and talking, um, majority of the audience are older, Caucasian males and some women too. And so you look into the audience and sharing the story of how impactful blood donation is, and then you start to think, okay, not to say that our community needs to be reaching those type of numbers. There's no pressure to that, but at the same time, is it something that in 20, no, it'll be more so 40, 50 years time, we might see the demographic of those rooms change. So I think people being mindful or considerate of this from a young age is to see that some people hit really high numbers. But at the same time, back to there's no pressure to hit those type of numbers either. It's just some people just don't know that. Like before being on the program, I would just never have known that this is possible.
Possible, yeah.
People do these type of things. It's like, yeah, badge of honor for them.
Yeah, superheroes, quite
Mhm.
literally. And I think that leads quite nicely onto one of the questions we got from some of our members. So one of them was asking about if you've traveled to a country in Africa, whether you could donate.
So we have, if you go on the website, you'll be able to look to see travel and health. So it's good to, when you're signing up, have a look. The challenge that we have currently, and there is lobbying going around this, is if you do go to certain countries in Africa, so sub-Saharan Africa, there is going to be a restriction on when you can donate. So after you've traveled, you'd have to wait 6 months. And so there is tensions in that, and it's something we have to be mindful of. And that's because they just want to make sure, check in relation to like if someone has malaria or if they end up getting antibodies, or and there's the scientific and clinical realities that they have to think about. It's not like they couldn't introduce that into into our population because malaria isn't common in the UK. So there is that tension where people really want to donate, but people want to do Dirty December. So then you have to think, maybe I have to plan my donations around like travels and that's, but at the same time, if you go on blood.co.uk, you can look at the travel and health section to be able to see some of the things that might restrict you from donating or might make it be that you would have to wait before you can actually do your donation.
Okay, thank you. And I think we had some other questions about if you've got nutrient deficiencies like iron deficiency, if you've got thalassemia trait as well, whether you could donate. And I think a good place to go would be the www.blood.co.uk website.
Yeah.
But I think we should move on to...
Well, actually, I just had a
Okay.
quick thing I wanted to add.
Fair enough.
So obviously, I know you were just talking about, you had mentioned that you were in a room and a large majority of the donators were Caucasian people. And it's an unfortunate reality that I think we do have to admit is there. And I feel like, well, something that I was kind of reflecting upon is that some of that some of that feels like it's due to a lot of cultural and religious misconceptions from the Black community. And what I actually thought about was that a few years ago, I actually read a book called The Children's Act. And in that book, there was a boy who needed blood donations, and he was actually a Jehovah's Witness. So they're in there like the issue with his religious views and religious background conflicting with his health and his need to survive. And I think that that consideration and that kind of turmoil occurs to this day. And I just wanted to ask any of you if you've seen anyone have similar experiences where their religion maybe wasn't didn't permit them getting blood transfusions, or if you had personally had that yourself.
The fact that we're both wearing crosses. So talk about religion. I want to hear your thoughts actually on this topic when it comes to like religion and medicine. Yeah.
I see. This is my personal opinion. So what I think is when it comes to the Black community in in the world, it isn't an issue with religion and medicine that we have. It's an issue with trust in the medical system. And whether that is donating, going to your general practitioner, going to A&E, or needing something invasive, there is always going to be this distrust among our community to any healthcare system around the world. I I don't think that has anything to do with religion, but how we have been treated historically as a people and how we have been defined in medical literature up until recently. And the fact that medications, treatments, things that we may need to survive or that have been prescribed or recommended to us by a doctor primarily are tested on a Caucasian population. So they're not tested for our population. So I understand the misconception, the mistrust from our community, because what we need to save our life sometimes wasn't even researched on our demographic. And even though it might work, it doesn't mean it won't have side effects or issues that weren't discovered in the research because we weren't a part of it. So that's my personal view, that I think there is just mistrust, deep, deep mistrust within our community to any healthcare system.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the whole mistrust element. I do think there is the element of um religion, the dimension of like culture, religion, and it's because there's this like concept of healing, but I do feel like there's a drive for healing to look as like instantaneous miracles. And there's been so for the Jehovah Witness group, there's obviously is that they wouldn't be want blood from others, so they might have to go through like synthetic blood considerations and all of that. But there's just something when it comes to, let's say, I would speak from an African perspective, but there is something to say about instantaneous healing. Lay hands, go to the church. We want, that all to happen. So, um, and that tension, I don't know how it's like on the donor or potential donor side, whether there is those type of thinking and does potentially cloud or influence their thought process. But then there's like I was listening to the concept of the three types of healing. So it's like healing through miracles, healing through medicine, and then eventually in glory. And trying to focus on how we use medicine as a healing process in itself. And that's where the conversation of blood donation can come in. And I think that's how I've been trying to grapple with the tension of faith and um talking or expressing the like power of blood donation, because it's you know some people will understand the cause and be like they want to get involved, but there is still quite a few people where their focus will be like, why don't you go to the church, why don't you go to the pastors, um is this necessary? And there are obviously other rationales and reasons why people might not choose to donate, but uh it's a bit of I'm still working through that, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, as you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's completely understandable. And I think with the current crisis that we face, with a lack of blood donators from a black background or from the black community, it's important, I think, to separate our cultural and religious beliefs, I believe anyway, from, you know, when it comes to addressing our health concerns and our health needs. And so I think Tamsin had something that she'd like to mention about that.
Can I just quickly
Go on,
so
yeah.
when you mean separate, do you feel that there will be a way to separate, or um can it like harmonize and coexist together? Because I'm curious about that.
It's a good question because I myself, I'm religious too.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian. And when it does come to my health, being a doctor in the family or soon to be a doctor, um, and having people in your family have their own beliefs and their own methods compared to what you've been taught and educated to know, it is hard to sometimes coincide with the two. And I don't think it is impossible. But I think from my personal perspective, I think understanding um, a level of separation sometimes may be necessary
Mm,
for you to simply just exist.
mhm,
But I don't think that does mean that they can't coincide.
mhm,
And I think as well, it probably thinking about sort of people who are thinking about donating blood, but maybe cultural or religious ideas are maybe swaying them a little bit. I think it'll probably take time. Like I feel like it's okay to be weighing up two different things. It might take, I don't know, months or maybe even years to decide. But I think starting these conversations and like talking about it and discussing, I think that's a good step forwards or a good step anyway. Yeah.
yeah, definitely planting the seeds.
Yeah. And I think when we move on to the next section, so thinking about why we need black donors specifically. Do any of you have any answers as to why do we need black donors for black patients, if that makes sense?
Yeah. No, because we have the RO subtype.
Mhm.
And if we have more black donors, more donors that are from our racial ethnic background, it means when we go through these exchange blood transfusions or top up blood transfusions, there will be less of a chance we will have a transfusion reaction or develop antibodies. So it will make our lives safer. It will mean every time we go in for our exchange blood transfusion, we're not worried about this time might be the time I develop antibodies. This time might be the time I have a transfusion reaction because the blood I'm all getting is from Caucasian donors. And that is a real worry for a lot of people with sickle cell on a regular blood transfusion program. It's a really big risk to be on that program long term with the blood that we get because of those risks.
And could you quickly just explain what a transfusion reaction is?
A transfusion reaction it comes from the body rejecting the blood that you're
Yeah.
getting. So you can be getting one bag of blood, all 7 are fine, but this one bag of blood particularly you've had a reaction to. And it could manifest in hives or, swelling, sweating, breaking out. Some people seize. You could have really bad reactions to having a blood transfusion reaction.
And I've heard elsewhere that the more amount of not so closely matched blood that you receive, the less likely that future blood donations would work because you've sort of gathered more antibodies. Is that a correct
Yeah.
interpretation?
Once you've developed antibodies within your body, then they will need to match every single bag of that blood to the antibodies, not just to your blood, to make sure that when you get the blood, you don't have a reaction and it doesn't cause anything bad to happen within your body, because it could be really bad. I'm laughing, but it could be
Yeah.
really bad for a lot of people and really life-threatening.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned the RO subtype. Could any of you explain what that is and why that's important?
I'm not gonna lie, the RO subtype part is a bit tricky for me. All I could explain, it's more prevalent in Black communities in comparison to Caucasians. But my depth of awareness when it comes to the RO subtype is it's not as strong.
That's okay.
But the thing is, for sure, when she's referring to reactions and developing antibodies, I think this is where definitely in terms of the amount of units a person is having on a regular basis, I think one-off transfusions are fine if someone's in an accident, an emergency, and they just need they have a transfusion from anyone from any ethnicity. It's totally it's manageable. But the moment we are on these type of programs and receiving quite a lot, I've seen it happen in quite a few cases where you're supposed to be planned to have your treatment, then you find out your body's rejected, you've got more antibodies, so now that treatment's cancelled. They have to go and send for additional testing. You're supposed to have your treatment. Now you have to wait longer before you can get your next treatment. And then it's you're dealing with the symptoms and the challenges that are associated with the condition that it's growing or grain. Some people, it's to the case where they actually are not able to be on the program anymore. So it's now they're in that type of scenario that they're going to only wait to say they will do that level of transfusion if it's life and death, because they can't. So they'll have to think of other treatments like hydroxyurea, which is a chemotherapy drug that's utilized to treat people with sickle. So they wouldn't be able to now be on the program that could help suppress and manage their symptoms. But I think back to RO, definitely look online for more info, but it is more prevalent within our community. And this is what helps in relation to matching and receiving blood from people from the Black community to treat people with sickle cell who are from the African and Caribbean background too.
Yeah. And we've
Yeah.
got
Oh.
we've got a stat here that says that around 56% of Black heritage donors carry the life-saving RO subtype.
Yeah.
So that's over half of us.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that 3% of donors are Black, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the numbers for I mean, it's moved up since, I mean, from when I remember before it was like 1 or 2. It felt like it was lower. We're moving in a good direction. At least we're not regressing.
Mhm.
But I mean, yeah, there's a lot around that, to be honest, when it
Mhm.
comes to the challenges of like more people seeing the benefits, understanding, donating, and maybe doing a second donation. So it's
Yeah.
Hearing those numbers and hearing the stark disparity between the amount of black people that could help save lives and
Mhm.
the amount that actually know that they can and actually do, that margin is so large. But I think in this day and age, there's always time and improvement to grow, and it's never too late, I don't think. And that's kind of what this podcast is trying to do in its own small way. And so I think just to wrap up, because we have been singing for a little bit of a while, um, I actually wanted to ask each of you, what do you hope listeners take away from the conversation that we've had today? And I'll start with you, Jeannine. Yeah.
Okay. I hope that listeners can take away some more education about sickle cell and some better understanding about sickle cell and how blood therapies can help people with sickle cell live a more normal life and a more comfortable life and a better quality of life. I hope that listeners will consider signing up to be blood donors, even if it is like signing up to the blood and transplant website to find your nearest one and have your initial blood test to see if it's even possible for you to be a donor. I think even just signing up to even see if you can be a donor, because not everyone can donate, and that's okay, but you should at least try and see if you're able to, and hopefully that listeners take away that they can go and donate possibly,
Yeah.
please.
And Mary.
so I would echo that for sure when it comes to sign up if you can. If you're still apprehensive, like do the research, you can engage with various content online when it comes to seeing the power of blood donation. I mean, I was looking online, I was on TikTok like yesterday and I saw this little girl and she was on a transfusion. She was doing this little dance and I was like, it's there's a beauty to it. It's a bit emotional because it's like like really young people are needing to be on transfusion. Some people are on transfusions from birth, but the fact that you saw the joy in her, the fact that you could see that it was giving her life and movement. So sometimes it's being like just also have a look at people's lives that are improved and saved by it, but also have an awareness and look at what people's like the donors' experiences, because sometimes just exposing yourself to information and gathering or getting the knowledge is powerful. I'll also do a shameless plug. So there's I'm really interested in like when it comes to exploring sickle cell genetic inheritance and the element when it comes to like people just being aware of their genotype. And so then we're on like this Know Your Bloodline project, and I think it's those ones where finding out or being aware of what your genotype is, it's really important because when it comes to sickle cell, the question is are how how are we here? And how is that impacting the next generation? So I just think knowledge is power, being aware. You also find out your genotype if you do a blood donation too, because they once you do your first donation, they do this like full health check screening for you anyway. But that obviously we're here to talk about sickle cell. We're here to talk about blood donation. And so I'm just hoping that the listeners like found it insightful at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Tamsin, how
Yeah,
about you?
I think echoing very massively what both of you have said. And I think as well, just knowing that it's not too late, like you can take that first step if that's just looking on the website, like you said, or if that's, even if you can't donate, if that's like promoting it or sharing it with your friends or anything, just anything that we can do to make other people's lives better, basically.
Mhm.
And I think for me, I think what I want people to take away is understanding that it's invisible. And I think for me, because I'm somewhat more educated about it than, let's say, your average person, um, like I'm aware of that, but then majority of people might not be. And I think being able to use your empathy and kind of imagine what people are going through behind closed doors, I think is so important. And what I actually quite like is when you see creative ways for young people, and I think the world today, to kind of get people to understand that and understand about sickle cell. And as we were talking, something came to my mind about how about a few years ago there was a TV show. I think it was called Supercell. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have watched it, and I think that was just an excellent way to show like it was creative to kind of express what people are going through, but not in a way to make people necessarily feel sorry for you, but in a way to uplift you. And obviously there was an element of fiction to that, and with them being powerful. But I think we are powerful, and you are powerful in your own way. And I think young people can see that and kind of get interested about what you guys are going through in a way that maybe teaching them at school might not. So I thought that was really cool. hmm Yeah. And so I think that is all that we have to talk about today. Thank you again so much,
Can I
Jeannine.
ask you guys a quick question?
Yeah. Go.
So what did you find like one to take away? Because I know you gave your reflections, but even from hearing perspective, what kind of sits in you, especially from a medical student
Yeah.
perspective?
Hmm. I think what you briefly touched on at the end about knowing your genotype, I think that's really important as well. Um, Only because yes, we know a lot about the molecular biology and the genetic makeup of people, but it's just something that not everyone will know, like off the cuff, oh, what's your genotype when it comes to your blood type. So I think making people understand that and maybe be aware of that, I think is something pretty cool that I think young people could get behind. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna hate to say, but I think similar to you.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being very unoriginal, but I think knowledge is definitely power. So similar, knowing the genotype, also knowing what you kind of don't know and where you can be curious. So, for example, like you said as well, going on the website, seeing, okay, can I even donate? And just sort of trying to be curious and um, find ways where you can help or promote or find out more what other people are going through.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What is something you learned speaking to us that you'll take away today?
I think for me, understanding and hearing about you speak about the sheer volume of how much blood you require, and it's not just to be normal, because that's not really, I think, the correct way to say it. It's your normal, and like just to be able to like try and get through your day. I think it's just it's hurtful to hear like that it takes that much to help you. And I think for me, if people can also hear that and kind of understand the sheer volume of that, it will encourage them to take the step of donating. So I think that was really helpful.
Yeah. And I think I've definitely been empowered. So hearing sort of, because as Baba said as well, this is invisible mostly. So I feel like hearing what is going on sort of behind the closed doors and still yet what you're achieving and how like sort of how passionate you guys are, I think that's really empowered me for sure. And probably, well, definitely a lot of our listeners as well. So thank you very much for sharing and asking the question as well.
So yeah, that's everything that we have to talk about. Once again, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you listeners at home for listening to our conversation. Hope it was insightful, hope it was impactful and informative. But I think Tamsin has something that she wants to share with you guys.
Yeah, so if you want to sort of join us, we're going to be doing a group blood donation. So putting everything that we've heard today sort of into action. You're free to come along if you can donate blood or if you're interested, but also if you can't and you just want to come to support, you're definitely welcome. And in the link there will be the link for the sign-ups in the description of this podcast episode. So definitely check that out as well. And on there will be a link to the NHS website where you can find out about travel and if you're eligible and any other nitty-gritty stuff that you're curious about as well.
And yeah, so we want to see all of you there, or as much of you as possible. And we think it's important to continue fighting the fight and giving back and hopefully saving lives. So thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Take care.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.